Is it possible to have a relationship with someone who has done something or said something or been offensive to you, but yet you were able to still maintain the relationship? Is it possible to become the kind of person that's unoffendable? It is very easy to find something to get offended by, right? We can all get our feelings hurt about plenty of things. Just this week, it was on Wednesday, first day of school. I was so excited. My wife was so excited. We've got 5 kids. Oldest is in 10th grade. Youngest is in 1st grade. And they all go to the same school. So we drop them off in the morning, have a wonderful day. I had a bunch of work. I've been really busy doing a lot of speaking, a lot of preaching, and had a bunch of meetings in the morning. Went to lunch with somebody, came back from lunch. I was looking at my watch. I was like, it's 2 o'clock. I got to pick the kids up at 3 o'clock. First day of school. I'm going to reward myself. And I'm going to take a little nap. So I set my alarm on my phone, which I just thought, that's just precautionary. I'm not going to need it. I normally take like a 20-minute power nap. You know, the data says, the research says that can help improve your day, just a little quick power nap. But I got my favorite pillow. It's got a flower on the front of it, ball it up, laid down on the couch. And I didn't wake up until that alarm went off at 3 o'clock. I mean, I was dreaming, I was drooling, I was out. Woke up feeling like $1 million, jumped in the car, driving to school, pull up to the school. The principal at the school, who's a friend of mine, younger guy, very sharp young man, really grateful for what he does with his life. I rolled the window down and said, Dr. Sheps, how was your first day of school? He said, Mr. Scroggins, great to see you. It's been a great day. How was your nap? I was like, what in the world? How does this man know that I took a nap? I look in the mirror, y'all. I had an imprint of a flower on my face that was so pronounced. I was so embarrassed, and I was slightly offended that he asked me that question because I didn't believe we knew each other that well. But I guess the flower was so unusual, he had to say something, I guess. Listen, there is a lot we can get offended by. And here's the problem, as Rusty said last week. The offenses that do often happen, and oftentimes we get offended because someone has done something offensive. But the offense gets in the way of a relationship. And our relationships at times, they have the potential to feel competitive. You got any relationships in your life that feel sometimes competitive? Maybe it's somebody at work. Maybe it's somebody in your neighborhood. And it's real easy when we start to feel competitive, it's real easy to get offended. I want to talk today about why it's so dangerous to bring that kind of competition, to bring those kinds of offenses into our relationship, and then to ask the question, is it possible that we might be too competitive? Not in life, all right? I know you all like to be competitive. We've all just watched the Olympics, and we all have the thought, well, I think if you give me 30 days, I could break dance like that, I believe, right? But there is a problem that when life gets too competitive, particularly in the realm of relationships, it can become problematic, right? That when we get too competitive in our relationships, it's real easy. You can advance those slides. I think I'm moving faster than y'all are moving. You can move it all the way to the relationship slide. There you go, one more. Here's the problem. When the games begin in relationships, all of us have a tendency to get offended. When the games begin and there's somebody who's trying to win, it means that somebody's going to feel like a loser. Somebody's going to get offended. And when the games begin, the game is over, right? When the game begins in a relationship, the game is over. And so if you're in a game with somebody in your neighborhood who's trying to get a nicer yard than you, somebody who's trying to get their kids to be more successful than you, somebody who's trying to make more money or show that they've got more money than you, somebody who's trying to show that their side of politics is more right than your side of politics, it's real easy to get offended. Let me ask you though, in our relationships with each other, what's the goal in the relationship? Just think about that a second. Well, what's the win? What's the win in a relationship? What are you aiming for in the relationship? Here's what I think. I think that the win in a relationship, it's the relationship. That the win is that you might be able to have a relationship. You know that you have very slim odds of making a difference in somebody's life that you do not have a relationship with. See, the people in your life that have made the biggest difference in your life are probably people that you have a relationship with. It's probably a grandmother who's been praying for you, or maybe a friend that stuck by your side through really hard times, or maybe it is a coworker who has really helped pull you up when you were in a tough situation. It's hard to make a difference. It's hard to make an impact on somebody when we don't have the relationship. And today I want us to look at 1 Corinthians 9. If you got a Bible, you can go ahead and turn there. 1 Corinthians 9, the Apostle Paul gives us a little bit of a playbook he gives us some insight. He pulls back the curtain on what his goal, on what his hope is in any relationship. And I believe that if we might take the risk of trying on relationships like he's trying relationships, that it might change some things and it might lead to a place where we can be more unoffendable. Because the greatest problem with being offended is that it ruins relationships. Is it possible to have a relationship with someone that you disagree with, and yet you can still have a relationship with someone? Is it possible to have a relationship with someone who has done something or said something or been offensive to you, but yet you were able to still maintain the relationship? It doesn't mean that we have to change our messaging. It doesn't mean that we have to look past the offense. It doesn't mean that we have to even say that they were right. But is it possible to maintain a relationship? Is it possible to become the kind of person that's unoffendable? Here's what Paul said, 1 Corinthians 9. And you got to know Paul, first of all. You got to know who he is, right? But he says in verse 19, he says, though I am free and belong to no one, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. Let me tell you who Paul is. See, Paul was he was named Saul. A lot of you know this because maybe you know a little bit about church history, but Paul was born as a man named Saul. He was a Roman citizen. He was a buttoned-up Jew. He did all the right things. He was filled with doing the right thing, with justice and abiding by the law, making sure all of his T's were crossed and his I's were dotted. But he had this moment, this epiphany, right, where he went from persecuting Christians or followers of the way to one of the most adamant, passionate, zealous Jesus followers that has ever lived overnight. He had this encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus where God changed his name from Saul to Paul. And he realized that God made him, God designed him, God created him, but that his sin stood in the way of a relationship with God. But Jesus came to be a sacrifice for his sin. And this was radically offensive to every person that he had grown up with. So you think about a man like this guy, he doesn't have JV offenses. He's got varsity level offenses, right? He's got all these Christians that he had persecuted. They might be like, Paul, I'm happy for your story. I'm happy that you put your faith in Jesus, but I saw what you did to my uncle. I saw what you did to my son. I remember what happened to me, and I'm still bothered by that. I'm still offended by that. On the other side, he's got men and women that he grew up with, that he believed the same thing with, that he ran around with and persecuted Christians with. And now he's on the other side and he's calling them out. And they're going, Saul is what I'm going to call you. I don't like what's happening with you. I don't like the change that's happening with you. We feel offended. And all of these people are out to get him. All of these people, he's got beef on both sides, right? He's got problems with both sides of people. But what he says in verse 19, look at it again. He says, though I am free and belong to no one. And let me just stop and say this to you today. Some of you need to hear it. Did you know that if you've put your faith in Jesus, that you are free? You're free from anybody's opinion. You're free from anybody's condemnation. You're free from anybody who's trying to put a claim on you. You don't have to be who you used to be. You don't have to be who you were raised to be. You are free today. And you belong to no one. But look at what he does. But he says, however, I make myself a slave to everyone in order to win as many as possible. Let me ask you this question. What was Paul's main goal of his ministry? Based on what you just read, in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19, what was Paul's main goal in his ministry? All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Was it not? That's what he just said. He said, put it up there again, the one with the bolded words, right? He says, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win. But he's not trying to win an argument. He's not trying to win a competition. He's trying to win somebody over. He's trying to love somebody in such a way. He's trying to serve somebody in such a way that they might look at him and go, man, I don't know what it is that you believe, but you've made a difference in my life. Help me understand, who is this Jesus that you keep talking about? Can you remember the person that did that for you? Can you remember the person that, maybe they wouldn't have put it this way, that they were free, but they became a slave to you. Maybe they would have said it in those words. These are 2,000-year-old words. This is the way Paul put it. But they would have said, I didn't care about cars, but I went to the car show with you because I cared about you. I didn't care about the Cowboys, but I watched the game with you because I cared about you. I didn't care about listening to the kind of music you listened to, but I cared about you. And so I was interested in the things that you were interested in. I tried to understand the culture that you grew up in. I tried to understand some of your pains and some of your problems and some of your proclivities and some of your hang-ups. I tried to understand what it was like to be you because I loved you. Maybe you had a grandmother that did that for you. Maybe you had a coworker that did that for you. Maybe you had a cousin, a brother, a nephew. Maybe it was a friend of yours that said, hey, I got to invite you to my church. And because they loved you, because they served you, because they cared for you as a person, you said yes. And you met Jesus because of that person. You know, just recently here at Crossroads, we had